We want to thank everybody for coming out today. We're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start with our greeting from Ms. Dorton, and then we'll go to our introduction of the panelists by Ms. Donaldson, and then a poetry reading by Ms. Angela Thurman.
Good morning to each of you. This is a special occasion for us at John Brown Watson Memorial Library System. We are celebrating the second day of National Library Week, Libraries Transform. We are excited and privileged to be sharing this wonderful experience with you. On behalf of Chancellor Alexander, Mr. Edward Fontnet, and the entire library staff, we graciously welcome you here today. Thank you.
Our task is to introduce our panelists for today. Start from the end. Ms. Sherry C. Norwood, Attorney Sherry C. Norwood, Systems and Metadata Librarian and Assistant Professor of Law Librarianship. She has a BA in 2003 from Arkansas Tech University, an MED in 2007, University of Arkansas Little Rock, an MED also 2010, University of Arkansas Little Rock, a JD 2012 from UALR William H. Bowen School of Law, and MLS in 2015, University of North Texas. Professor Norwood joined the law library staff in 2014 and earned a promotion to faculty in November 2015. In her role as Systems and Metadata Librarian, Professor Norwood's primary focus is helping law school faculty and students, local attorneys and judges, and the general public successfully search, access, and retrieve legal information and resources. Professor Norwood is responsible for managing all the modules of the Law Library's integrated library system, performing original cataloging, supervising, copy cataloging, and assigning library-specific classification and shelf listing. In addition to her role as Systems and Metadata Librarian, she participates in the reference desk rotation, which provides her with valuable experience and knowledge about the information needs, cognitive processes, and search behaviors of the law library's patrons. All important considerations when cataloging, classifying, and indexing legal information and resources. Prior to joining the library staff, Professor Norwood was in private practice. She is a member of the American Library Association, the American Association of Law Libraries, the Southwestern Association of Law Libraries, the Arkansas Library Association, the Arkansas Bar Association, and the Pulaski County Bar Association. Professor Norwood is also a member of the Honor Society of the Phi Kappa Phi, inducted in 2011 through the University of Arkansas Little Rock chapter. Stephanie Bayless, CA. Stephanie Bayless is the archivist and assistant manager of the Research Services Division at the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies, which is the Arkansas History and Genealogical Department of the Central Arkansas Library System. She is a certified archivist who serves as a current board member of the Society of Southwest Archivists and the Arkansas Women's History Institute. Stephanie's first book, Obliged to Help, Adolphine Fletcher Terry in the Progressive South, was published in 2011. Mr. Sean Manis. He is the operations manager of UALR's Oppenheimer Library. He has degrees in criminal justice and philosophy. He enjoys working in the library and helping people find the information they need. Most users remember him because he mostly wears black and dragons. He feels he gives pretty good service too. He has been fortunate enough to interact, work with a lot of interesting people from all walks of life. In his spare time, he likes reading, playing video games, and going for late night drives. Please welcome our panelists.
Now we will have a poetry reading from Ms. Thurman.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The poem I'll be reading today is entitled Books by Sonia Tandon. My best friend is a book that doesn't give me a weird look. It is like a golden door that takes me to a land that I have never been before. It tells me the tale of fairy that take me to the land full of Mary. Some books are bored like history, which is like a big mystery. Books are the source of enlightenment that banish darkness and fill our life with brightness. Thank you.
The ways in which libraries transform are numerous and varies as the peoples that we serve. Physical transformations are easy to spot. Transformations in service and scope can be less apparent, but are ever changing. The question is to the panel is why libraries are transforming, and if you would, please give us some examples in the way in which your library has transformed.
I'll start. I am Stephanie Bayless, and for starters, I should say that I work at a public library. So we get every shape and form of patron that we can, and it's important that obviously any library stays on top of things, but we have some extra issues on top of that, providing services to economically disadvantaged patrons, that kind of thing. In my field, in the archives, we've made moves to try to get younger and younger students into the archives and working with public history documents. We've made some excellent strides reaching out in sort of unconventional ways. We have a large collection of Arkansas Jewish history materials. So we set up a booth at the Jewish Food Festival every year and reach out to patrons that way who might not know that they can come in and find this information about their past in Little Rock, their families. Outside of that, say, just in general, if the libraries have to transform or people aren't going to come in the door, it's important that you're meeting those needs. In our realm, we've put in the past year probably 2,000 items, digital scans of photographs, documents online, so we can reach people who aren't able to come in, who are across the country, overseas, and our stats have just shot through the roof. The best example, most recent example, I should say, was a group of items we put up for Women's History Month this March. Out of all the stuff we put up, we had exactly one use of one item in 2014. And in 1 month in 2015, we've had 152. And so, that's our best, my best example of something that we do that really shows that future thinking and that transformation.
I think for my library, it's a lot of it is not just staying relevant, but staying ahead of the curve as technology changes, as expectations change, and those are ever evolving and constantly evolving. What we kind of look at is, what can we provide that's going to be best for our students, and whether it's going to be, laptops, iPads, something as simple as a calculator, it's going to make one less purchase for them to have because tuition is not getting cheaper, nothing is going down in price. Also creating it more of a friendlier atmosphere where the library is a third place, not just your dorm or home or where you go hang out off campus. This is where people want to come to see and be seen. We have a lot what I would call like social studying going on, where it's people getting in groups and they're studying, but they're also talking and just chatting, that kind of things. Especially we see this like here in finals when people at that point it's like 1 a.m. and we're kind of when we're starting off. We're going to start talking about something else. And then providing things that aren't necessarily the norm for libraries. Like we have a copy cart in our lobby now. On our second floor we have guided media tables, which are similar to what's on the second floor here, which is a large screen TV. We put 4 laptops onto it. And then having them, if they want to practice PowerPoints or just like a booth setting where it kind of cuts down some of the noise. Another thing I think we're looking at too is as much as we want to see group spaces, we still have a high demand for individual study spaces, which we have. And we actually unfortunately have more of those than we do for groups. And I think just traditional libraries are fading away, but libraries will still remain. It's just what will we become. And it's not how you keep them from people before. So a lot of what we've done is our restructuring is how do we better position our staff to be more responsive to student needs and more proactive, such as we no longer have a reference desk. So the operations staff is the front line triage reference. Well, if we're doing that, that's going to decrease what we do with the desk. So we're training student workers to be a lot more capable of working the front desk, doing some very low level reference. So we've created peer consultants, tech consultants to help us on the technology side and help with us. And we find that that's actually very good for our student workers, gives them a lot more investment into what they're doing, and students will be a lot more comfortable talking with someone who's what you're looking at themselves in a sense, as opposed to someone who's been here for 50 years and maybe have a little bit more, it looks a little more intimidating, as opposed to this someone who's in my classes, they know Blackboard, they know the stuff I'm doing right now.
The library that I work at is a unique library because it's both an academic law library but also a county law library. And so our patrons' needs are very unique. The needs of a pro se litigant coming in are a bit different than a judge coming in or a law student coming into our library. So in the past few years since I've been there, they've been working on different things to encourage patrons of all backgrounds to use our library and use our resources there. One of the big differences that's occurring now, many of the legal resources that we have available are electronic resources, and so developing ways to encourage the use of those resources is something that we're working on now. When a student performs a search, they receive several hits, but at the same time, they don't really know what they're looking at. That's kind of an issue. So we're working on different information technology sessions with them, also sessions where we sort of discuss with them what good legal resources are, what legal resources may not be as good depending on the sites they're finding those things from. And those are some things we're doing. We're also looking at restructuring our physical space. We have study units available for students. We also have group areas available for students. And those are the things that we're doing to transform the physical space. But we're also trying to work with students so they understand how to use the card catalog or catalog as of now, and also how to basically use the resources they have available to them, but use them in a way that's easy. Many of them are familiar with Google searching, which is not really the same as we all know, and so trying to transition them from feeling as if they can go on Google and find anything to understanding the databases that we have in our library are very useful, very specific, and they can help refine their searches. And so that's what we're working on at my institution.
Okay. Okay, the next question is actually from Ms. Norwood. And it says, other than Westlaw, what other databases can a person use to do research about court cases?
Westlaw and LexisNexis are great legal resources that we use. We also use ProQuest. ProQuest has a lot of congressional information. Court cases not so much, but if someone's wanting to research information about their congressperson, they can go on that site, they can find out their background, they can find out information about that person. HeinOnline is another great tool. Court cases not so much, but if someone's working on a legal issue, if they're wanting to find old statutes, they can find those things on that resource. It's a great tool because on HeinOnline, there's an actual print copy of the resource, and so if someone's using it for citation, they can actually find the page number, whereas some of the other resources, they're just looking at text, and unless someone's really knowledgeable about where the actual citation is, it can be a bit confusing for them. There are free legal resources that are also available that we use sometimes with our patrons that come in. The Arkansas Code is also available online for free, and that's something that people can have access to. So with court cases, there are some that are available, but most of the legal databases we use are ones that will assist someone going through the legal process, which include a variety of text resources.
Okay, thank you. The Library Transform Campaign is an initiative by the American Library Association. It is designed to increase public awareness of the value, impact, and service provided by libraries and library professionals. It increases awareness of and support for the transforming library. It shifts perspective of library from obsolete or nice to have to essential. With all of the transformation that the libraries are going through, like self-check, online database, e-books, digitization, are we as libraries still relevant? That's the question.
Very much so, I think. Very much so. I think it's a lot of it's customer service. People want someone to talk to. Just because you go to Kroger and there's a self-check, some people don't want to go through that line. We have people who don't want to use a self-check. So I think it's that human interaction. Also, we're going to be able to direct them to things like if it's a better database than one person needs, and that they have several to choose from, and choosing that better database, then that person is going to be able to guide them better than a best hits type of thing, which is not bad if you're doing general research, but I think it's still going to be very much so.
Did anybody else want to respond on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I would say stuff I work with is one-of-a-kind historical pieces, whether it's documents or photographs or even books. You know, we scour eBay looking for things that have already been spread across the country to bring them back to Arkansas. So I think it's a lot easier for me to to be able to argue that point, that obviously. But, you know, just in addition to that, the library is so much more than a place with books on shelves. You know, we assist people in all sorts of things. I help people find little bits of history. I help them find their great-great-grandmother. You know, I help them find a record where, you know, their grandpa bought a horse in 1842. You know, just throw that out there. You know, and we help people with more sort of everyday concrete things. You know, you can come get your tax forms. And, you know, at the public library we do tax sessions, and we have language programs, and we have all sorts of activities for age, you know, tiny, little, you know, come to story time, all the way up as far as you want to go. And that's not something that you can replicate through the databases, through the ebooks. Obviously, you get some of that, but the kind of knowledge that the staff has, not only of the resources we have to offer, but how to navigate them is something that your average user doesn't need to know. You know, they just need a little bit to work through there, and they can get that from us.
I agree with the other two panelists. I think in our profession, daily, we're given the opportunity to encourage other people to understand more about our profession. Understand that it's not just about books, it's about information. And information comes in many different forms and fashions, and it's available in many different formats. One of the quotes that I like the most that deals with this topic is by John Bing, and it reads, "Ask why we need libraries at all when there's so much information available elsewhere. It's about as sensible as asking if road maps are necessary now that we have so many roads." And so it's very on point. I mean, today, all of us in this room could use our cell phones to create an information object instantly. And like in cataloging, there's so many things that come through my office that are objects that I'm responsible for cataloging, making sure that I'm using access points so that consumers or patrons can easily come in, access and retrieve that information. So I think understanding that with the public, figuring out a way to say, hey, we're responsible for organizing information. We're responsible for helping you access and retrieve it. And that's our challenge today, just because it's assumed that they can find anything they want online. And the reality is a lot of the resources we have here are specialized resources that are useful to the patron accessing and retrieving information in a way that's honestly probably more efficient and more helpful to them achieving their end goal.
Thank you. The next question is actually from Ms. Bayless, and it was, is there a great demand for archivists in the field of library science?
You know, I came into archives before the sort of job crash, where it was much easier to find a job. Archivists coming out of school today, there are plenty of jobs. There are not as many permanent positions. We tend to fall into that project archivist, where you've got a 2-year grant-funded project. It's the only way we can get money, and that's excellent if you are, as an archivist, you're able to kind of travel around, but that only works for a certain number of people, especially in a state like Arkansas, where there's just not a lot of places with archives, and most of those are small and don't have as much staff. It can be a very, very difficult field to break into right now, just given the current job atmosphere, especially if, I have a family. I was lucky enough to get into my job before that happened, but when resumes come across my desk, a lot of the people that don't even get put in the maybe pile were me. And that's extremely discouraging to know if I was entering this field, my resume probably wouldn't get looked at, because there's so many other people overqualified trying to find those positions. And I don't mean to say that discouragingly, as in there's absolutely no jobs. They're out there. But if you have any kind of geographic requirements, you know, if you're looking to enter your field, you need to sort of branch out a little bit. A lot of people think about archives and they only think about academic libraries. Well, you know, I'm at a public library. Corporate archivists, records managers is not exactly the same thing, but it's, you know, it's a tangent, same skills. And so, you know, you need to kind of open up a little bit and think a little bit more broadly about what you might want to do if that's what you're thinking about.
Okay. This is a follow-up. It's basically dealing with the software applications or platforms that you use, some of the main ones that you use in your archival position.
You know, in the archives, depending on where you work, one of the most popular systems that we use is Archivist Toolkit right now. Archivist Toolkit is sort of a content management system. You can track our session records, we bring items in. You can create finding aids for the collections. You can create and track digital objects in there. Technically, it pops out MARC records. We have a cataloger. I've never personally tried that part of it. Archivist Toolkit is no longer being updated, so people are moving in other directions. The one that's kind of coming in to fill the hole is Archive Space. Unfortunately, while it is technically open source, what I understand is it's extremely difficult. And so most people are paying the fee, which again is just an extra cost. Outside of that, most of all modern finding aids are put into what we call EAD, which is an XML tagging system. And it means that once I pop out a finding aid, it can be picked up by any other database, any other aggregate database, and it's going to look the same and it's going to be able to be searched the same as anything else they pull in. And that's why we use these systems to create those. Outside of that, you know, at CALS, our biggest actual patron database that they want to come and use is Ancestry.com. Since it is expensive to have your own personal account to that, you know, at the library, you can come in and use Ancestry Library for free. And that is a massive draw for people coming into the Butler Center.
Did any other panelists want to say anything on archive? In the library?
Yes. As it's part of the state library, Stephanie, do you go out to public libraries or academic libraries and assist in setting up archives?
No, we are the Central Arkansas Library System, so we're not the state library, we're our own entity. And the Butler Center, we handle that. I would say overall, being the public library, we kind of have the mentality that if you come ask a question, we'll help you figure it out. We've coordinated with other people before to sort of answer questions, particularly along digital things. We run a large program of oral history interviews, and we have a studio available on site that anybody can come in and use. You can just call the main number and reserve it, and you can interview your grandmother, your great aunts, record their stories, and you get a copy and we get a copy. So it's kind of like a StoryCorps thing. And along those same lines, we get a lot of questions of groups wanting to set up their own projects, and we're always able and willing to help out. Particularly if we can work out a deal where maybe we get some of those too to put in our collections and get patients to come in and see.
Our next one is actually for Sean, and it's operational manager, which we know as circulation. And currently we are transitioning to a new circulation module, which is they call is ARMA, and they call it circulation module fulfillment. But the question was, what new software platforms are used today in the circulation area of the library?
Pretty much what we're using today, and our big ones are Sierra, which is our checkout system, innovative. That's checking books in and out. We use that to pull hold lists. So when a person requests a book online, we'll go pull it, check it in for them. We actually have a new thing called ArcReach, which is a collaboration with CALS, where our patrons can get their books and their patrons can get our books. It's really one-sided. Our patrons are getting more of their stuff because they have the popular books and fiction, fiction books and movies that we don't have. And then our other thing is Barrows, which is our print management system. And that's a combined pay system for printing and copying, as opposed to it being two different systems. It makes it easier for the staff. We're not taking in two separate kinds of money for two different things. It makes it easier for the students, so if they're heavily copying, they can put that money towards copying. We have an ITS lab in the library, and they actually have for free printing, whereas in normal circumstance we charge 10 cents a page for printing and give them $10 just to start them out with. But right now we're having to bypass that. And then our online catalog, that's really our big things. We're moving towards a learning commons, and I think this might be talked about a little bit later on, but and that's going to expand a lot more of operations, technology staff's technology knowledge. I think there'll be a learning commons crew, but right now we're in it, so we're really kind of, any kind of training or learning we can do is kind of what we're going towards right now.
Okay. Did anyone else want to comment on that particular question? If not, Sean, I do have a follow-up on, you talked about the learning commons and how you're changing. And I wanted you to give us a little bit details about, a little bit more information on how you all changed from calling your circulation to operation manager. Give us a little information about that particular transition.
In July 1, a couple years ago, we actually were taken over by a new college, associate provost, and we were not really affected by restructuring going on at UALR. But then we found out we were going to be restructured in the sense that, as a whole, we're collections and archives, which can consist of Ardent Harbor Library, the National Sequoia Research Center, and Center of Arkansas History and Culture. As far as that goes, that was kind of a rebranding of collections and archives, a restructuring of the internals of those three areas as far as terminology for the positions. Maybe kind of buzzy, kind of stuff going on campuses now, whether it's student success is a big one. Like our reference, we no longer have reference staff. They are actually a student success branch and a research and scholarly communication branch. And one's focused on student orientations, whether it's intensive English language program or first year experience. They'll do events like scavenger hunts around the library where you can go around and find different bits of information around the library. The other side is kind of more intensive research programs, grant writing, which our associate provost is very heavily into, to find money to pay for things that we don't have. And so that kind of created, like, operations becoming the frontline reference. As far as where those terms came from, there was a restructuring committee that came up with those. I think they were just trying to find things that are not the traditional library, because that's not what we are anymore. We're no longer being traditional libraries. So what are things that are going to capture people's attentions?
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to go to the floor for Ms. Wiley. The questions from the floor.
Using open sources and library services has become very popular now. I would like to ask each of you, are you using open sources daily, and if so, to what degree?
I'll answer. Our library at this time, we aren't using many open source resources for daily purposes. We have considered some of them. It's just transitioning has not really been at the forefront. Most of the things that we use daily are things that are fee-based, and so maybe in the future we may look toward that more, but as of right now we aren't using very many.
As the archives, the only sort of lone standing department of a library who has all of their own systems, and then there's us with our systems. We try to use open source as much as possible because it allows us to put more of that in our hands instead of our IT department kind of having to reinvent the wheel and provide a lot of support for one branch when the Central Arkansas Library System has a dozen branches that they have to worry about. And then the one program I mentioned, Archivist Toolkit, is open source. And that is sort of the kind of hub of what we do every day with our collections and how we provide access. And so that's a real big one for us.
For us, we don't really use any open source of any kind.
This question is for Sean, but everybody can answer. How do you get people to adjust to this transformation, especially going from your reference to a non-reference desk?
Not easily. I think what we first saw was, some hesitancy, some kind of like what's going on, what's going to be my place, especially for the librarians. And I'm going to get myself on hot water statements, but I think part of the appeal of being on desk is you're kind of where the action is. You're kind of at the forefront of things. So that for them was probably not as an easier transition because they're being pulled back as opposed to spending so much time on the desk and being out there. I think after about a year now, we're a little more used to it. For my staff, as we were going into the triage frontline reference, was not so much. I think a good thing for my group is that we're very flexible. We're very malleable to what's going on, and so it was not so much a problem for us. We were already kind of seeing that to begin with. One thing when we were doing, we were kind of writing questions down there. We asked at both desks. A lot of what you get is, where's the restroom? What's my username and password? Very simple things that you had a $40,000, $50,000 reference person out there answering, which could be, in most instances, could be answered by a student worker. And so for us, it was, well, okay, this is going to be coming towards us, which I think is a good thing because a lot of times you don't see the classified or paraprofessional staff be in a role where they're giving actual reference work. And it's leveled. I mean, there's some point where we'll pass it on, but to my crew's credit, they've taken it on. We've done some advanced training with the reference staff, the librarians, to learn about, be more knowledgeable of databases and what's out there. And then on our own, taking our student workers and boosting them up and making them peer consultants, which basically those are people who work at the desk with us. They're very highly motivated. They're self-starters, really high customer service skills, which is what we look for. If we're going to put someone on a desk, they need to be able to interact with people, be a little thick-skinned, because we'll have patrons who are not always most pleasant. But then training them to do the stuff that we can't do, because if we have to leave the desk and we're having a longer transaction, we're trying to help that person on the computer find their sources. So it's not been an easy transition for everyone, but I think we're finally getting there where people are a lot more comfortable than what we were a year ago, where it's kind of like, if they're doing this, what am I doing? Kind of, where's your job and mine begins, type of stuff. So I feel very comfortable with my staff. I feel comfortable with my role going into it now. I think some of that is because we do have different things that are affecting the library now with the other units, and how does that play into the library as a whole. And I think communication is still, not quite there yet. And again, who's kind of doing what? And that's been a little problematic at times, and not majorly problematic in the sense that, people are getting mad or whatever, but what's going on here and how is this changing and how do we start to adapt to what that is.
I'd like to add a little to that. I should have mentioned this earlier. The Butler Center is housed in the Arkansas Study Institute, which also houses the UALR, Center for Arkansas History and Culture, Special Collections. So a few years ago, when we both moved in, archivists from both sides had to learn very, very quickly how to access the other collections from the other institution, how to work together. We had to teach the UALR archivists how to deal with our genealogists, because we always like to say genealogists are our bread and butter. They're the people who come back every day. Sometimes we have regulars who are there 4 or 5 days a week. So I feel like we've kind of experienced some of these bumps in a different way when we both moved in together, and again, this might get me in trouble. It was very bumpy, and it was largely because the planning had been done so far up the chain, they didn't know the problems of the day-to-day desk workers. And we all alternate. If you're an archivist at the Butler Center or at CHHC, or if you're a student worker at CHHC, you work the desk. And we didn't even have, when we first opened the door, we didn't have merged policies at any point. So it was, well, what's that item you're looking at? Is that a Butler Center? Is that a ULR archive? And so I think whenever you're planning sort of reorganization like that, or when you're dealing with a massive change, it's very important that you're including everyone in the discussion. Everyone needs a point at the table at some point, obviously, so that you're not overlooking those day-to-day. It's 10 a.m. on the research desk, and this guy walks in. What do I do? Who do I call? That was a huge question. Who do I call? Because not only we had staff everywhere, and then we're part of the libraries who would come in looking for things that should go to a traditional reference department, things that we couldn't do in the reference history department. And the CHC archivist didn't know who to call or where to send them. So a lot of those simple things can be easily overlooked that really make the day-to-day kind of hard in the beginning.
Especially I think, when you're saying there's like a sit down with those frontline people who know what's going on, and especially if you're circulation, you're doing security, you're doing every little thing, you're problem solving, and so if they're not seeing what's going on from the top or even mid-level and not meeting with you, they're not getting the full scope of what you need from them, especially like from the technology side. Because we don't know what we don't know, and so what do we need to communicate so you know that, and then how can you fill the need that we have? So.
For my library, the biggest transformation that has occurred has been the amount of electronic resources that we're now utilizing. As I said earlier, we work with a diverse population of patrons. And for some of the attorneys who practice for 30 years or more, when they come to the library, they want the book. And for some of the students, they want the electronic resource. And so there's a reference, for example, when someone comes in and they want a book, and I know that the item is also available electronically, I try to have kind of like an extra attitude or with price with an attitude about it. I offer them the book, but I say, this resource is also available online. Let me show you how to access the book. Because a lot of the books, we're reading those from our collections, and some of the things are only available online now. So the biggest thing is trying to encourage patrons who may be a bit apprehensive about using the online resource. Hey, this resource is here. It's easy to access. I'll teach you how to access it. The hope is when they return to the library in the future, they can access it using that database or that resource if we don't have the resource available in print copy anymore. So that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to transition from, and just encouraging people in general to transition into the electronic side if they can, because some resources now, that's the only place that we have them available for review.
Are there any other questions?
This is for Stephanie. I'm looking at your website and the e-banner that you publish.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is that to do as far as copyright? You had a lot of pictures, photographs, and books, different things.
Exactly. That all comes from things that from our collections. And when you donate a collection, you turn copyright over to us. So we're very careful to use things that are either we know are public domain, we really think they're probably public domain, or we know that the donor owns the copyright and gave it to us.
Okay.
So it's really just a mixture of being careful and having be concerned not only with copyright but privacy concerns. But yeah, it all just comes from our collections.
Great. Now, in distributing that e-banner, is it just on your website? Do you send it out to outside patrons?
It goes out by email.
Okay.
And I think there's still printed copies that go out that are small.
Okay.
We just switched maybe last year to a larger e-banner format. Before that, it was all printed. Butler Center's been doing that for almost since inception. And it's always been very popular, but we just maintain a mailing list and it goes out.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And thank you all so much for such valuable information.
I'd like to thank all our panelists for their coming and sharing with us today. It has been excellent, and it gives you some things to think about. And because we know, we talked about, because we had someone who say, well, we don't have everything in place, but I tell them it says transform. That doesn't mean it's when you do your first step, that's the end. It's a continuing process. So what you see today may not be what you see tomorrow. So we just have to be patient and learn to And one of my questions, because I had put, why is it important to identify emerging trends relevant to libraries and the communities they serve? And that's one of the reasons, because things are continuing to change. Not only, we talk about technology, but, as Ms. Norwood was saying, a lot of resources are just not available in print anymore. So we have to be able and be willing to adapt to those changes as they come to us. So at this time, as we get ready to conclude our program, we're going to ask Ms. Lockett to come up and do presentations, and then we're going to have remarks from Mr. Fontenette. And I want to let everyone know that in this area, there's lunch once we finish.
I would just like to echo what Ms. Martin and Ms. Watley said, that y'all gave us a lot of information, and Mr. I'll be calling you. Because we're getting ready to do some different things with circulation, and so I'll be picking your brain for ideas. Okay, I'll be calling you, okay? We have some presentations for everybody. Mr. Sean Mattis. Thank you so much. Picture. Thank you. Ms. Sherry Norwood. Ms. Stephanie Davis.
I think these were excellent presentations, and I hope that I heard that we have really transformed from about 10 years ago. And I hope that the students and the faculty who go into your libraries and utilize them we will not hear what we heard 10 years ago, that we were not open to the students from the Pine Bluff area. I hope that all of the libraries are open. We've not done a survey to see how open they are, but I wish the students would test us out and let us know if they have a problem utilizing libraries throughout the state. Again, thank you so very much for your presentation, and I want to thank everyone who attended. And as Ms. Martin indicated, we have lunch there so we can engage in informal conversation. Thank you so very, very much. I want to recognize our special guest from Monticello and any other special guests we have. Thanks a lot.